Welcome to Let's Talk About That, the show where every week a Lyra mental health coach, like myself, answers one of your top questions about mental health and well being. This week, let's talk about self compassion. I don't know about you, but I can be my own worst critic. My internal dialogue used to be pretty harsh at times, especially when I would mess up or was going through a difficult time. If I'm not mindful, I can slip right back into that pattern of mental chatter that isn't very friendly towards myself. Rather than mentally kicking myself when I'm down by getting on that hamster wheel of self depreciating thoughts, I've gotten into the practice of employing self compassion. Today, I'd like to share a bit more about what self compassion is and some suggestions on beginning to offer more of it to yourself when you're struggling. Let's define self compassion to start, shall we? Kristen Neff, a psychology professor at the University of Texas, is at the forefront of researching and implementing the profound benefits of self compassion. She defines self compassion as being gentle, kind, and understanding with yourself, acknowledging that you're not perfect and understanding there's potential for learning and growth in every mistake that you might make or hardship you might encounter. She's very careful to note that self compassion is a practice of goodwill and not good feelings. With self compassion, we mindfully accept that the moment we're experiencing is painful and embrace ourselves with kindness and care in response to it. In other words, we all suffer in life, so how can we take better care of ourselves in these moments, similar to how we would a good friend or child? There are a couple essential things I just mentioned that I want to highlight as key elements when beginning to practice self compassion: mindfulness and treating ourselves like we would a friend or child. To begin the practice of becoming more compassionate with ourselves, it's essential that we begin to monitor and become mindful of our own internal dialogue. By recognizing when we're talking harshly to ourselves, comparing ourselves to others in a way that induces or exaggerates our own suffering, or are going through a generally difficult time, we can begin to shift and change this tone and behavior towards ourselves. If you're feeling down, crummy, ashamed, upset, embarrassed, I'd encourage you to monitor the way your mind is talking to you. My guess is it would not likely be the way that you would talk to a friend or small child who's suffering or who made a mistake. This is actually a key element in practicing self-compassion. After noticing how you might be causing yourself to suffer through internally judging or criticizing yourself, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, if a friend was going through this same situation, what might I say to them? And then put it into practice. Take a couple of deep, mindful breaths and offer that same advice or condolence you would share with your friend to yourself. I find it helps to use my own name when I'm practicing this technique. So a self-compassion reflection towards myself might go something like, Jess, this is hard. You made a mistake and you feel like you let your team down. It's understandable and totally normal to feel bad right now. You're human after all. You'll learn and grow from this experience over time, as you have before. But for right now, be kind to yourself because you're really hurting. You might notice how different this dialogue is from how we treat ourselves when we make a mistake. By beating ourselves up, we can often extend the feelings of remorse and shame, versus by offering a friendly condolence to ourselves, we can move through these same feelings towards resilience, at least in my experience, more swiftly. This helps us tap into a key element of self-compassion, our common humanity. As humans, we all suffer from time to time, and it is never in isolation, even though it can feel like that pretty often. Others have likely felt what we're feeling, and reminding ourselves of this can help tamper down the shameful feelings that coincide with our mental suffering. If talking to yourself like you would a friend still isn't cutting it, go talk to a friend that you trust, Open up to them about what you're going through in order to diminish those feelings of shame and to remind yourself that we're all connected in our internal experience of pain and suffering in our lives. Another question I find comes in handy in moments where you need to offer yourself some self-compassion is, what do I need right now? It might be a hug, a break, a long talk with that friend, lunch. When we catch ourselves internally berating ourselves, this can be a great question to cut through the mental clutter and get to the heart of what can help us start to feel better. I'd also encourage you to follow this question with the phrase, what else, at least 3 times. So to demonstrate, what do I need right now? Might lead to a statement like, Jim to do his job. Okay. While perhaps true, not super helpful or compassionate, so I'd encourage myself to keep going. What else? To finish the work that Jim left on my plate so I can get out of here somewhat on time today. What else? To take a deep breath and recognize that I'm trying the best that I can with the information I have on Jim's project. Better? What else? I actually could really use a break before jumping in. I haven't eaten anything all day and I'm feeling pretty hangry. You might notice how those last 2 statements started to dilute the frustration of the moment and began to offer a bit more self-compassion as they continued. Now, my final tip on the practice of offering yourself more compassion sounds super simple, but do not discount its ability to make an impact. Make yourself some lists. When you notice your mind beating you up, causing your anxiety to ratchet sky high or you to feel ashamed or down, make a list of what helps you rise back to your emotional baseline. This is a tried and true technique that I have used to get me through some of the hardest moments in my life. It's about paying attention to what helps you in a tough situation and having it all spelled out for you yourself so that you don't even have to think about it when the moment arises. I brought my mistake list to share. I made a mistake. What helps? Take a 5-minute mindfulness break to follow my breath in and out. Figure out what I can do to make amends in the situation. Determine what I can put into practice to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Talk to myself like I would my BFF. Recognize and name what emotions I'm feeling. Go for a run. Share about my situation with my husband or someone else whom I trust deeply, who will hear me out as well as offer me some comfort. Get some sleep. Go to bed early. Crack open my favorite flavor of LaCroix and really focus on tasting it. I have this list handy so that I can grab it whenever life throws me for a loop, and it helps me be kinder to myself each and every time. All right, friends. I hope that I've shared some compelling ideas for becoming your own best friend so that you're better able to move through those hard moments in life with a bit more grace and self-compassion. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in next week for another episode of Let's Talk About That. Do you have a mental health related question you think we should cover next? Be sure to let us know through the comment box linked below. Take good care.